Thank you so much. Hello, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the Communication Through Digital and Social Media. And I just wanted to spend a little time to let you know about these. We offer AmeriCorps VISTA webinars that focus on digital media every quarter. And you may remember these webinars as part of our Social Media Monday series. Well, now we've incorporated them into our VISTA Webinar Professional Development Series. And this is to help broaden the conversation beyond just social media and expand the digital media landscape. This is our first offering of these webinars in a new format. We hope that you find them informative and helpful and that you enjoy them. And now I'm going to hand it over to Tracy Johnson, who is going to introduce our speakers for today. Take it away, Tracy.
Thank you, Danielle. I am your host, Tracy Johnson, from the VISTA Outreach and Training Unit, and assisting to me today are Danielle, who you just heard from, and Robin. You'll also see the three of us in the chat and the Q&A, and we'll be assisting you throughout the session and make sure that your questions get answered. So go ahead and take a look at today's agenda. Our goal is that by the time you leave this webinar, you will have concrete strategies to effectively use digital communication. And we'll also make sure that throughout the way and at the end, you will have opportunities to get your questions answered and to make sure that you fully understand the strategies that we are trying to convey to you. So take a look at this image right here and go ahead in the chat feature, try to put a caption on what you see going on. And for those of you who are also on Twitter, feel free to use VISTA Digicom to add a caption as well. Okay, so I see a lot of good things going on in here. As some people are saying busy people, chaos, communication, life in motion, just a modern day, social media networking, the World Wide Web, exclamation point, noise in blue, media is a building project, love in the time of social media, very cute, Emily. Social media landscape, connections. So as you can see, and I think many of you all are getting the point here, that there is a lot of communication going on. There are people literally in the cloud working, conferencing over a table, on a ladder, putting things up, and they're doing various aspects of digital and social media. But one of the things that we really want to convey by the end of this presentation is that there are many tools and platforms that you can use to communicate, but digital media should be part of a larger communications plan or strategy. This isn't a standalone, and when it is used as just individual pieces, so hey, we want to put a Facebook post or we want to send out an email, you get the sort of chaos that many of you all have alluded to. As much as here at VISTA headquarters, we try to stay abreast of the latest communication strategies, even we have to sometimes rely on the latest research or best practices that we're learning from other expert communicators. And so that's why I'm excited to say that we have Joseph and Jennifer here to help you all today and to highlight some of those best practices that will make sure that your digital communications fit into a larger plan. Thank you, Joseph and Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So I will start off the webinar here. My name is Joseph Porcelli, and I'm the Director of Engagement Services at GovDelivery. And my co-presenter is Jennifer Kaplan, and she's a Product Marketing Manager. And our goal today is to share with you some of the experience we've had as an organization helping government clients reach and get people to take action. So I'm going to take the first couple of slides here that we'll be addressing, but I wanted to just tell you how much I appreciate and actually know about the VISTA program. I was fortunate enough in 2008 to work on the Service Nation campaign and really got to know a lot of folks and lived in Boston and know a lot of folks at City Year. Charlie Rose is a friend and a mentor of mine. So what's up, peeps? It's great to be on the phone with you here in this webinar. So let's go ahead and click to the next slide here, and I'll tell you what it is that we're going to be covering. If we could advance the slide here. I could have one of my fellow co-presenters. There we go. Thank you. So 3 things that we're going to cover today. How to connect with more people and grow your direct audience. Secondly, we're going to look at how to get that audience to take action through proven messages and engagement strategies, and that'll be very insightful for you. We've got a lot of great data to share. And then how to analyze those results and drive future communications. And I'm going to do what I can to put on my nonprofit hat, having led a nonprofit in Boston for 10 years and having a really cool project called Snow Crew that I've been running this winter to help seniors and those with access and functional needs get dug out. So we're going to try and really make this as real-life nonprofit so the insights that we're sharing with you will be useful. Let's go ahead and continue. Okay. So I'm going to take a second to tell you a little bit about GovDelivery. We help government organizations connect with people in the public and get them to take action. And there's about 1,000 organizations that use our communication cloud, and they're engaging over 60 million people, and about 30 million of those people or 30,000 people sign up every day. And the result of the work that we do is there are safer communities, happier commuters, happier commuters, healthier families, and better government. So like you, we have a real mission-driven focus, and we're happy to be here today to share some of the insights. Let's go ahead and continue again. So what's your strategy? And if we can continue to advance as I talk, that'd be great. One of the things to think about here that's really important is that campaigns don't get flu shots, people do, right? Smartphones don't buy phishing licenses, people do. And it's something that's really, really important to think about as you go through and think about what it is you're trying to accomplish with your digital communications, right? We think of digital communications, everybody's all excited about social media, Facebook and Twitter. And one of the things that we focus on is direct communication, and that's done through email. And what's important about that is you're not reliant on different Facebook algorithms. For example, you may have heard that it's much harder for organizations to reach people via Facebook now because times are changing. So it's really important to consider it's all about people, and then how do you reach them directly. And let's continue, please. So as we are advancing our slide here, you'll see on, thank you very much. This is a great little campaign that UNICEF put out here, and it's like us on Facebook, and we will vaccinate 0 children against polio. And that's actually meant to be kind of funny here because a lot of folks are focused on getting likes, and the focus really needs to be on getting people to take action. And you've heard perhaps the term the marketing mix. So it's important as you think about digital communications in your marketing mix to realize that different platforms have different roles. And one of the things we want to dispel is that it's important to reach people directly so you're not dependent. And it's one of the core ways, and it's how the business world actually through email gets people to take action. Let's go ahead and continue here, please. So there's a simple truth, and this really applies to everyone, for all of us, no matter if you're working with government organizations, if you're working with a local school or library or economic development corporation, whatever it is, that you want to connect with more people and you want to get those people to take action. Next slide, please. So the next thing here is we want to provide this framework for you to think about it. And I'm going to ask you here, what matters more to you? Do you want to get a small group of people to just hear something and not really take action? Or do you want a large group of people to hear something? Or do you want a small active audience or a large active audience? So as we go through and we think through these quadrants here, it's important for you to take a second, which matters most to me? And either quadrant could be fine depending on your mission or what you're trying to accomplish. But for the focus today, let's focus on the top right quadrant where we want lots of people to take lots of actions. So that might be people serving in a neighborhood cleanup or participating in Serve-a-thon or participating in the Service Nation campaign or doing whatever it is that you want to do. And I see in some of the chat here, large and active audience. All right, cool. It sounds like we're on the same page here. Next slide, please. So what are the 2 levers that you can pull to get more people to take action? It's pretty simple. You can increase people taking action, and you can increase getting more people And combining those two together is really what makes the difference, right? So there's different ways to increase action, and there's different ways to get more people, and those are some of the things we're going to cover today. If we go through the next slide, please. So if we're looking, if we are looking to increase action, one of the things we can do is we can take a look at content. We can make sure our defined outcomes are something we're consistently focusing on. We can segment and target our messages, and we can build a digital community. And all those things, as you think about and you advance, are actually going to get people to take action. You wouldn't send someone an email to show up at a event at a library for young children if somebody didn't have a family, right? Those are the kind of things you want to talk about. And you would want to make sure that that message is compelling, and you would want to make sure that the event is at a time that people could actually get there. So we're talking really about some common sense here. So let's go ahead and continue. So as we think about here, could someone actually please tell me what slide number we're on here? I think we may have just missed one, but that's okay. Sorry to interrupt. Go back one. All right. Sorry, let's go ahead and continue. I'm sorry for the confusion. So how do we get more people to, how do we connect with more people and get them to take action? That's the question we'll be addressing. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So we remember this paragraph when we're focusing on the large active audience. Let's go ahead again. Next slide, please. And the lever that we're going to talk about here that we're going to pull, there's a couple different ways that you can grow your audience, right? So we're getting more people to take action by growing our audience, and that's mining for data of information that we may have, email addresses, some form someone may have signed up, they may have registered for an event. We want to leverage all that, right? You want to leverage signups through your social media channels, and you want to convert web traffic to your website into email relationships so that you can reach people over and over again. And you also want to use networking techniques to build on the momentum that you and your partners may have. Let's go ahead and continue. Okay, so let's talk about networking first, and we'll go to the next slide. So there's different ways to cross-promote. So how many of you have actually ever shopped on Amazon.com or been somewhere at a restaurant where they said, would you like fries with that? Or now that you've bought this awesome slip and slide because you're going to go have fun, you may want these other toys. It's a really important framework to think about, and I actually don't see the nonprofit sector doing this enough. And it's something that's really important for you to think about. It's important because there may be an action that you've asked someone to do that you could also ask them to take another action afterwards. They may have signed up for your event, but have you told them about the fundraiser that's coming up? Let's go ahead and continue. And so you want to cross-promote your network with others. And here's a great example of an organization that has a volunteer match, and it's allowing people to go to one place but to find out lots of great different examples to volunteer in their community. And this was the one example that really resonated for us because we thought it's something that would be applicable to a lot of your organizations. So pretty much what happens, it gets the folks in, they're hooked, and then they connect with different partners. Go ahead and continue. Next we're going to cover is leveraging web properties. And if we'd advance to the next slide, I'll give you some examples here. So this website here is actually neighborsforneighbors.org. For those of you that are in the Boston area, you may know the work that I do with neighborsforneighbors.org. Back in 2007, we built the first social network in America that connects neighbors to each other and to civil servants and folks at City Year and all the different organizations that serve Boston. But one of the first things you'll see when you come to the network is an opportunity to sign up for our email list. We have more people signed up for our email list than we do on our social network, and what that allows us to do is drive people to events and things that we think would be interesting to them that they've signed up for, but also allow us to make it easier for people to get to know us and then choose to join us later. Overlays will typically help you grow your email audience by, get this, by 500%, right? So we would organically get, I think, something like 20 or 30 or 40 a month. Put the overlay on here, we're growing by 200 emails a month. So if you think about that in terms of donations or getting people to volunteer or attend your event, it's super helpful and super important. This is really easy to do. There's free code out there that you can use, and it really makes a difference. If there's one thing you take away from this that's an easy to implement and will have a huge impact, it's adding an overlay to your website. Let's go ahead and click continue here. The other thing is, on every page of your website, and this is an example of National Guard, one of our clients, you need to make it easy for people to sign up for email updates, right? You give them compelling information, but do you want them just to take that information or leave, or do you want to convert their interest into an ongoing relationship? Having these kind of direct sign-up boxes really helps you achieve that. Next slide, please. So catching subscribers at critical times is important. So, for example, this is USA.gov. It's the web portal for America. So if you have questions about government or which agency does what, it's a great place to go to get those answers. But during Hurricane Sandy, for example, they allowed people to sign up for updates about Hurricane Sandy so that they could continue to engage and educate people and help them understand what was going on and where the resources were. Next, please. Next thing is about uncovering existing subscribers. So go ahead and continue. Now, your existing subscribers, these are folks that you may have information about that currently aren't on your list. They may have been someone who I previously talked about signed up for a webinar, for example, who showed up at an event, or who, for example, made a donation. And you want to make sure that you're giving those folks the opportunity to sign up for other information that may be of interest to them. And often, if you think about it across your organization, people may have different contacts in their Outlook files or in Gmail or Google Apps or whatever it is that you're using, and you want to make sure that you're giving everyone a chance to sign up for the list that may be of interest to them. And I caution you, too, that it's important to give people the opportunity to opt in and not just to directly add someone. They need to choose that, and it's important for your email deliverability rates, but also to make sure that you're respecting your audience and honoring their wishes. Let's go ahead and continue. Next slide, please. All right, so integrating with social media, and we'll continue. Integrating with social media is important because it allows you to extend your message, right? If you're sending out an email, there are different platforms that will allow you to also post to Twitter. Hey, we just sent our newsletter, read it. You can also reverse this and post to Twitter and say, hey, we're about to sign up, we're about to send our newsletter, sign up so you don't miss what we're about to communicate with you. And this will actually drive a fair number of sign-ups each time you do it. So you can use this to, for example, announce a video that you just posted to YouTube. You can use it to announce a newsletter that's going out. So think about this in terms of cross-promotion. You want to leverage the resources and assets that you have. Let's go ahead and continue. So transforming fans into subscribers. I think some of you may have heard, and if you haven't, you really need to learn about changes that Facebook's making, right? Engagement on Facebook on pages has dropped significantly because Facebook has changed its algorithms, and they're leaning towards having people pay to reach the public, or pay to reach your subscribers. So if you've seen your engagement analytics drop, it's on purpose. One of the ways to make sure that you're not dependent on Facebook algorithms is you can add, we have an app for GovDelivery. If you're a government agency or a large nonprofit and you use GovDelivery, you can sign up directly for email updates. And I believe there are other platforms that also offer this functionality. And that should be a part of, if you're managing a Facebook page, you want to start getting people to sign up for your email updates now, right? You want to reach the audience. You don't want Facebook to walk away with your fan and your community because that could be detrimental to your mission. Let's go ahead and continue. I love this concept here. This is called create once and publish everywhere. So you have great content. It doesn't have to just belong on one channel. You can repurpose that content. You can reframe that content. You can make it relevant to different audiences. So it's one of the biggest challenges we hear is, what should we publish? We only have so much time. Well, take something that's great and think about molding it and making it work for your different channels. Continue, please. Actually, let's continue through the slide. Yeah, I forgot this one built. All right, thank you. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Jen Kaplan, our marketing project manager at GovDelivery, who's going to take over the next set of slides here. Jen, here you go.
Great, thanks, Joseph. So now I'm kind of excited to take a moment to talk with everybody about mobile. So we think about mobile usage. We have 266 million people on mobile devices in the U.S. And mobile outreach is really a new opportunity to connect with people at key times while they're on the go. And we're all on the go, as I'm sure you can attest to. It's also another great direct channel that allows you to build a list of phone numbers who you can contact at any time. Again, we've talked and heard so much about how Facebook has been limiting the people you can reach, especially with those recent news articles that came out, and I've seen a little bit of chatting in the chat window about it as well, or how on Twitter tweets move so quickly that it's hard to get your message across, and the messages that you all are sending are so critical and important. So mobile is just another direct channel you can use to leverage to connect with more people. But mobile can be a little bit of a daunting space, but there are some easy kind of tactical things you can do to really kind of crush it with mobile. So if we want to go to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit first about apps, smartphone apps, iPhone apps, Android apps. Many of you probably work with organizations who have a mobile app. Maybe your individual groups have a mobile app. And making a small change to that app is a great way to grow your audience. So we have an example here from the IRS. Their app is called IRS To Go, which provides tax information and easy access to tax tools, which I'm sure many of us in the United States might need to use pretty soon here before their deadline. So they always anticipate a lot of people are going to use this app, especially during tax times. They really kind of capitalized on that by building an email sign-up box right into the app. You could do this with a phone number as well. And after they launched this in the first month, they had about 14,000 subscriptions to their mobile app, where during the same time last year, by just having an email sign up on their website, they only had 4,000 subscribers. So if you do have those apps, people are using them, and they're a really great place to kind of connect and capture more people who you can communicate with directly at any time. Let's go to the next slide. Great. So we also think about situations where your audience may not be near a computer or they have limited access to the internet. So kind of traditional methods for signing up for email updates through online processes might be a little more inconvenient, especially in rural areas. So what we've seen is really popular in the public sector is setting up text-to-subscribe functionality. So essentially how this works is I would text my email address and some sort of short code or keyword to 878787 or Gov311 or whatever short code your organization leverages. So I can send that text message and I can sign up for email updates, or I can actually sign up for more text information, which we'll actually see on the next slide. We can go there.
Hey there, Jen. I hate to interrupt you. You're in a great flow, but we want to just take a break. A lot of people, they need a breather. They're saying that information is going so fast.
Sure.
They're not getting it all. So I'm going to turn it over to Robin. She's going to ask some of the questions. At least there's one really good one in the chat. And then for those of you who, if you want us to recap anything, or you want the presenters to recap anything, put that in the chat, and we just want to slow the pace down a little and just take a little bit of a break and hear from you guys.
Great. So I have one question from Beatrice that is, if you don't have email addresses but you have a large database of names and addresses, what strategies would you use to take that list into the digital world?
Sure. Joseph, do you want me to take this one? I will take this one.
Go ahead, Jen. Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, no problem. So we don't see as many government organizations doing this, but when I worked in the private sector, I worked with a lot of brands like the Nordstrom, the J. Crew, and anyone that came from kind of that catalog space or that print space where you have just names and physical addresses, they wanted to find a corresponding email address. There are services out there that offer what we call e-append, where they'll actually go to a database that they have, run your list of names and physical addresses to find a corresponding matching email address. And then what happens is they would give you that file of email addresses, and you would want to send an opt-in campaign to make sure that it's okay and you're compliant to start sending messages to those people through a digital format. The return on those can be a little bit iffy. You don't always get very many good email addresses back because as over time, sometimes email addresses will bounce or they might be old and turn over. So we don't usually recommend that as a strategy for our customers to convert physical addresses to email addresses. We really recommend that they start kind of going forward on collecting email addresses on their website and social media properties. If you do have physical addresses, we've seen people send out flyers or postcards that have a link to sign up for email and really kind of pushing people through print channels to get people to sign up for email online. And when you're sending a print flyer with a little link on it to your email sign up or your website or your social media page, it's always good to use a URL shortener like bit.ly or tiny URL, so that it's very easy for someone to look at that and then go online and go to your website or wherever you're collecting the email addresses and phone numbers and sign up. I think that's what's a little bit more successful in the public sector in terms of the government groups that we work with.
Great, Jen. And there are a couple of people that I think are jumping ahead to where you were getting ready to go. They want to know things like process. They would love to set up a text to subscribe, and Brittany says most people understand how to do that, but they need to know how to find these things. And I think you were just about to get to another question, which was, can you expand on the idea of text to subscribe? So I think maybe that's where you were going in this next slide?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. There's a few ways that text to subscribe can be done. We have a lot of government organizations and public sector groups who set it up so that they're just trying to collect email addresses. So they have a sign near a bus stop, or they have a TV commercial, or on their website and social media or out in the field, they're saying, hey, text your email address and this keyword to this short code to sign up for email. Now, if you're just trying to reach people via mobile and you're trying to send information to them via text message, we work with King County Public Health Department, and they have an interesting process. People can text a keyword like King, K-I-N-G, plus their zip code to a short code to get information about health care enrollment specific to their area. And the way it's set up is based on what zip code or keyword your audience text in, we would spit out a response that says, go here for these healthcare resources, or go to this website, or call this phone number if you have questions, or the deadline to enroll is this date. And GovDelivery, the company that we work for through the Communications Cloud, we offer all of the technology to do that. I'm not as familiar with some competitors of ours or other mobile messaging groups in this space. I can really only speak to the technology that we offer. But if you go out and do a Google search on two-way text messaging or mobile subscribe, there's likely other ways that it can be set up, but I'm kind of only familiar with our technology. We really recommend this, and I think it's very, very interesting and kind of a hot topic right now for nonprofit and public sector. It really casts a wider net for you to get an audience. We talk about low-income or rural citizens are more likely to have a cell phone than internet access. So it's kind of like where the internet and traditional media fall short, that text messaging and those programs really fill in the blanks. And I think the really big key to success here is making sure it's promoted everywhere. So community centers, signage, anywhere that your audience might be or interacting with your organization, it should provide the instructions with the keywords or the short codes that you're using. GovDelivery facilitates, the short codes and the keywords and everything with all of our customers, but whatever process you do choose or use would be, you want to make sure it's clear instructions out there for everybody. And then for the next slide, we actually kind of transition to a different segment of our presentation. So we've been talking all about how everyone can connect with more people and why it's so important to increase your outreach, and a few tips on how to do that. And so we're transitioning now into, once you have that audience, how do you drive them to take action? You need volunteers, you need donations, whatever it is that you're trying to do, the messages you're sending have a profound impact on those goals of yours. But how do we kind of move the needle and use the messages and content that you're sending to get people to drive action? If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. We talked a little bit about this earlier. It's this kind of like passive helping where, people like you on Facebook, but they're not actually taking an action, and we're going to talk about how you can do that. So on the next slide, you're working to grow your audience, you're reaching a lot of people, but I always like to say that reach without action is like a recipe for a chocolate cake without flour. You have all the ingredients for the cake, but it's just not going to turn out right. So we're always working with organizations to say, hey, you're doing a great job, you're reaching a lot of people, you have that large audience. How do we move them over to that upper quadrant, that large active audience? Great content, getting their attention, calls to action, making sure that messages are superbly crafted to drive action. And there's all these tips that we can give you today, but we have to think about that all of you have a lot of competition, which we'll talk about on the next slide. So years ago, I was at a branding conference, and we were talking about how all of us encounter so many brands throughout the day. You think about before you even leave the house, you probably see Cheerios or Colgate or Pantene Pro V. These are all of the brands that you're exposed to before you even leave your house. And at the same point, people have emails flooding in about all of their interests. In fact, by 9:30 this morning, I had received emails from retailers, news media, my bank, Amazon, so much more. I had 44 messages in my inbox this morning before 9:30 a.m. So, if you're communities and schools or Coalition for the Homeless, how do you break through this clutter to get your message across? You're competing with all of these brands and retailers and things in the private sector, so how do we kind of break through that clutter? If we go to the next slide, it's not just the brands that we're competing against either. We're competing against the context of where your audience is, right? People are reading your messages everywhere, at the office, while they're driving, which they shouldn't be, but people still do. Sometimes people are reading in the bathroom or under their desk during a meeting at work. So it's not just that they're getting emails or messages from all these other places and brands, it's also where they are. You have to think about the context of the audience that you're trying to reach. So if people are reading your messages in all these situations with all the other emails they're getting, how many of them do you think will spend 15 minutes reading a lengthy newsletter with 10 articles and a table of contents and 8 pictures? Probably not many. And that was the hypothesis that we had when we looked at email design. So if you want to go to the next slide. I kind of want to tee this up a little bit by saying, a lot of the public sector groups that we work with, like the CDC or Neighbors for Neighbors, they're sending a lot of automated messages. So we try to get people to have things set up so when your website or social media is updated, you can automatically trigger alerts out to people. And those are set up and they kind of run in the background. But what we're talking about today is those newsletters or those direct messages that you need to get out to an audience to get them to take action. So what we did was we set out earlier this year to transform traditional newsletters, those email newsletters whose roots are in this kind of lengthy newsletter format, and make them work for this new mobile brand-filled world. So we really embarked on proving what are the best practices in the public sector and nonprofit. So we worked with a few government agencies, and we went ahead and redesigned their traditional newsletters. This is an example from ready.gov. It's FEMA's National Preparedness Group. And I'll get to share a few of these with you today. We'll kind of come back to this and some tips on how you can kind of get the same great results that we found. So if you want to go to the next slide. So here's kind of how the tests worked. We partnered with various states and federal agencies, and they let us do really like a side-by-side A/B test of their current newsletters against a redesigned version. So we'd send 50% of their list, their regular newsletter that they always send out, and then the other 50% would get some redesigned content where we looked at some different email best practices. And then here's what we found out, if you want to go to the next slide. So we partnered with Michigan Department of Natural Resources, the state agency in Michigan. Their mission is to ensure sustainable recreation use and enjoyment. So they want to get people in the outdoors and going to their events and signing up to go to a park or do a campsite, and they really use their email newsletter to drive people participating in these outdoor activities. And we had really, really great results with them. I'll share that with you in just a moment. If you hit next on the slide. So the first thing I did was sign up for their email newsletter, and this is a little screenshot of what it looked like in my inbox. Michigan DNR uses a recognizable from address. I recommend for any of you who are sending email messages, make sure that you're using a from address that's from your organization. Unless you're like a very well-known official or elected group, we recommend not using an individual person's name, so that shortened recognizable from address is great. And then what I noticed here is this pre-header text, which is the very first snippet of text that is pulled from an email and populated on an iPhone or Android or some email clients. You can see there it says, having trouble viewing this email, view it as a web page. That's not very compelling. So we went ahead and changed this text, and if you hit next, we made it a little more exciting. So it said, check out the Zombie 5K race, hay rides, camping, and more. And making this very small change by adding this little bit of text to the top of the email increased their open rates by 20%. So that's a 20% increase in awareness, probably a 20% increase in people attending these events and participating. So if you go ahead and hit next. So then I kind of open up the email and I look at what's inside. This is one of those traditional newsletters, big images, lots of text, table of contents. And so what we found is that the top of the email gets the most activities. People aren't always going to scroll down your entire email. They're going to click at the top. So if you hit next on the slide, you can see our redesigned version. And then what we actually did was we talked with them. We're like, what is it that you want people to do? Well, they want people to attend their events and look at their calendar of events. So we put a real big button at the top. If you hit next, I think we have a zoomed-in version of it. This might be a little hard for people to see. A big button that says View Calendar of Events, View Hunting Season Calendar, right at the top of the email. And that actually increased the clicks 4 times. So 4 times increase in the number of people clicking through to view that calendar of events. The other thing that we look at is just the spacing as well. We want to make sure that it's easy for people to click through. Now, if your mission is to get more people to look at your events or sign up for an event, using a button like this in your message might help make more of an impact in driving awareness. So if you go on the next slide, just to do a quick recap, use a trusted short from address if possible. Try playing with that text that's at the top of your email. If you ever have any questions, you can tweet at us. We can help you out there. And then make sure your most compelling call to action, that activity that you want people to take, is at the top of your email. So if we hit next, and then we'll actually hit next again, because I know we want to kind of fly through this. We talked a little bit about link clicks and getting more people to click through. Whether you want them to watch a video or go to your website or register for an event or click through to donate, you have to make sure that that call to action is very strong. And we are seeing nowadays that over 50% of email is read on a mobile device, so your finger is the new cursor. When you're looking at your links and where you're putting them in your email, they need to be big and they need to be spaced out a little bit. And then also, if you can use a visual element like a button or an arrow where people can click with their finger, it's more likely that they'll click the right link. We also see a lot of people hyperlink text in a paragraph, and that's fine to do, but also add a link outside of that paragraph that somebody can click on. Again, the finger is the new cursor, and if you hit next, I've just kind of outlined the areas where we made some changes right there, and then hit next one more time.
Yeah, Jennifer, I just have a question that came from it on this particular slide.
Sure.
When people click on that link, does it go to a mobile calendar or does it redirect to their website?
It redirects to their website, but I believe they have a mobily optimized website. So that's a really great point. If you are thinking about the mobile experience that someone is having on an email, when they do take that next step, it's great to have a mobile optimized website. Otherwise, if they are on a smartphone, they can kind of, manipulate that with their fingers, but it's definitely preferred to have a mobile optimized website or a landing page. All right, so just kind of in summary here, make sure you're really calling out what's clickable in your email, again, with those buttons, increase the size of the links. more space in between the links so that a finger can click on the right link, and then linking outside of text. So if you're hyperlinking in paragraphs of text, make sure you add an extra link on the bottom. So if we hit next, I just kind of want to revisit again. We talk about how people are mobile, they're on the go. A good test is if you kind of look at your email on a mobile device and say, this is something I would be able to read under a desk at a meeting or in the car. Will I get the point? The last test that we did on the next slide was with the CDC, and we actually worked with their gestational diabetes group. And if you don't know what gestational diabetes is, it's a type of diabetes that's first seen in pregnant women and who didn't have diabetes before they were pregnant. The great news is that gestational diabetes is very treatable with a healthy diet and an active lifestyle. So the CDC is really tasked with getting that health and diet information to pregnant women through their email newsletter. But when you think about today's pregnant woman, maybe she has a full-time job. Maybe she already has a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old who she's rushing to pick up after work. Maybe she had to work late. Maybe she's really active in her church and in her community. We think about today's pregnant woman. Does she have 15 minutes to read a big, lengthy email newsletter, or does she have 15 seconds? So on the next slide, we went and looked at this newsletter that they're already sending. On the left is the example to their gestational diabetes audience. There's a lot of text, a lot of links, really a lot of information for the busy pregnant woman to consume. So what we actually did was slash this text and really say, what are the critical pieces of information that we need to communicate to this audience? What is gestational diabetes, and how can you lower your risk? And we talk about the website and web properties. Organizations are investing a lot in their websites, and that's a great place to put your whole list of resources and all of your text. Email is a limited media, so you can use that to get people's attention and drive them to your website for more information, especially when they don't have time to read an entire newsletter maybe at the moment that they read it. So if you hit next, we got twice the amount of opens and 3 times the amount of clicks on this redesigned newsletter. People talk about responsive design in email, but responsive design is just about making information aesthetically pleasing. It's not about increasing the comprehension and consumption of your content. And to do that, you really need to be concise. If you're repeating information or putting in fillers or throwing in extra information just for the heck of it, save that stuff for your website, because you've got one shot to get people's attention, and you need to make sure that it's just the most critical information. And using white space and larger font is going to make this content look much better on a mobile device and also more consumable by your audience. So if we hit the next slide. In conclusion, just remember to be concise where possible. Use that large font so it's easier for people to read on a mobile device. And make sure that you do include some white space so that people can kind of digest images or text a little bit easier. And on the next slide, just remember that people are mobile. We have less time. We're inundated with so much content. We think about that slide from earlier with all of the social media things and all the people and all the tablets. We're inundated with so much content that everything's about quick, snap decisions. On the next slide, just think a little bit about how the information world has changed over the years. It's kind of hard to see on here, but if we look at major news outlets like CNN, they have punchy headlines. If you look at your bank account, that's not my real balance, that $525,000. Your bank account shows you the numbers in big, bold numbers. If you look at the weather, and yes, that's the real weather from my hometown here in Minnesota, 3 degrees, you get the 7-day outlook, but today's weather is huge and apparent and right in your face. So the people that you need, your audience, to see your content are hardwired to respond to punchy, quick, snappy things. You have to understand that that's your audience, and when you're trying to reach that audience, how you're really structuring your content. And so the last thing that I'll talk about today on the next slide is, just to help with that understanding of that audience, I have some homework for everyone. Hopefully the chat doesn't blow up because nobody wants homework. But just think about over the next few days as you take your kids to soccer, or you go on Match.com, or you're waiting for the bus and you're browsing the web in your free time, think about and be conscious of which communications you open and why, because aren't you just like the people that you are trying to reach out to get that participation, that volunteerism, those donations? So think about what your day's like and what you read. And if you received a communication from your organization, would it get your attention and would you read it? So that's kind of our section on, really driving action from the messages you're sending. We did all sorts of other tests, and we'll have some more information available publicly soon if you want to follow us on Twitter at GovDelivery for that. So we talked about connecting with more people, getting those people to engage with what you're sending, and then now we're going to talk a little bit about analyzing results, and I'll turn it over to Joseph for that.
Thank you, Jen. So, analyzing results. I want to kind of talk about why this is important here, right? You really need to use your metrics to help you figure out, are you heading towards what really matters, right? How do you know that you're making progress? How do you determine what's important? These are all some of the things that I'm going to talk about. So if we can go to the next slide, please. I'm going to frame this again and by reminding us, we're focused on a large active audience, right? We want to get a lot of people to take a lot of action so we can make the difference that we want to make in the world. And to tell the story, if we go to the next slide again, I want to tell you a story about a project I've been working on for 5 years. It started in Boston. It's called Snow Crew. And Snow Crew is, the concept was really born. I had a neighbor in Jamaica Plain where I used to live. Her husband passed away, and after her husband passed away, it snowed a month later, and I thought to myself, who's going to shovel her driveway, right? And I knew that she wasn't physically able to do it, so I kind of went after the snowstorm and saw that no one shoveled her driveway, and I did it. Then I thought to myself, maybe there's other people that need their driveway or their sidewalk or their front steps shoveled. And so I was wondering, how could I help make that happen, right? It's something that's really important because when people can't get to the store or to the pharmacy or to their doctor's appointment or to work, or if they can't get the mail, maybe their Social Security checks won't be delivered, and maybe they can't get their medication that just arrived. So it's something I felt really compelled to address. And so what I figured out, my goal was I want to reduce that problem. I want to eliminate that problem, and I thought the way that I could go about it was to see who needed help in the neighborhood, and because Neighbors for Neighbors was a social network, still is a social network, and I had a large email list, I decided that I would create a Google form and then plot the people that needed help shoveling on a Google map and let everybody know. And guess what happened? Neighbors dug each other out after the snowstorm. That was really cool. And then about a year later, I heard a great story of then Mayor Booker. Someone tweeted at him, hey, Mayor Booker, I need my driveway shoveled, or my father needs his driveway shoveled. I live, halfway across the country. Could you send a truck over? And then Mayor Booker, now Senator Booker, said, sure, where's your dad live? And the person tweeted it out, and then Mayor Booker said, sure, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And something really cool happened. 20 people showed up and helped shovel out the driveway. I'm like, that's really interesting. And I'm wondering, how can I replicate this? And how can I make it so that it isn't dependent on one famous person to go shovel each other out? So let's go ahead and click on the next slide here. What I wound up doing with a partner, a friend of mine, that is we built this website called snowcrew.org. And snowcrew.org allows those who are senior and have access and functional needs to request that they need help shoveling. And then those of, maybe some of you on the call would like to help dig out your neighbors, go there and sign up and create a profile and then go dig out your neighbors. And it works. It's pretty simple. It really requires getting the word out, and we do that through email, and we use social media channels, and the press loves to cover this story. And so the newest version of Snow Crew was launched in February, and I can tell you that we have over 1,300 volunteers from Boston to Washington, D.C., and we've addressed over 306 shovel requests since the beginning of February. So it's been really cool. And so I first figured out, what do I really want to do? And then I worked backwards with the technology. So the rest of the story that I'm going to tell you here, and if we can go to the next slide, please, is really about, what was I going to measure and how did I think through that? So, for example, is I knew that I needed to grow my email list, and actually the overlay that we showed you earlier on the Neighbors for Neighbors website where Snow Crew used to live was how I grew that email list. So I actually just this year, I think we've grown like 1,200 people, and people signed up all up and down the East Coast as they heard about it. So it allowed me to send emails and grow it, right? So I measured the growth of my email list. And then I looked at, like, who of the people in the email are actually opening. Now, opening of an email doesn't really matter that much, but did they click, right? And what did they click on? Did they click and did they create a profile on Snow Crew? Did they click and spread the word? Did they go to our Facebook page? Did they not just like our Facebook page, but did they share our status updates? And we found that sharing on Facebook was actually email was the number one referral to the site, and then Facebook sharing was number 2. So those are things and metrics that I track. So let's step out of the Snow Crew conversation here, and let's just think for a second, like, what are you trying to accomplish, right? Are you trying to get volunteers to sign up to help with, Servathon, for example? Are you trying to get people to join AmeriCorps? Are you looking to recruit new Corps members? You have to think about those metrics that matter. And there's some examples here that I've distinguished in progress around email metrics, right? So there's the size of the list. And I encourage you to look at the total number of people who open and the total number of clicks on your links. A lot of people get focused on open rates and, click rates. If you send an email to 100 people and, 10 people click, you have a 10% click rate, but that's only 10 people who have clicked. So if your email list is 20,000, you got 200. That really matters, right? So don't forget to look at totals, right? And then when you're thinking about your program metrics, like how many people have signed up to be volunteers? How many people have requested shoveling assistance? Those are the important metrics that you need to track. And often, like, executive directors and different folks are trying to figure out, like, how are we making progress? Is it something that we should continue investing in, right? Those are all questions you need to answer, and you have to organize your metrics around being able to answer those questions. Let's go to the next slide here. So some analytics to guide you here. Jen talked a lot about this earlier. You want to get more opens in your emails, and you get more opens by writing compelling email messages, compelling subject lines, and there's some research on that, and there's actually there's an email guide and another guide that Jen and I wrote recently about building larger audiences available on GovDelivery.com. You're welcome to go there and download those. There's a lot of this information there. And I saw a question in chat earlier. It's important, when are the best days and times to send? There's a couple thoughts on that. People tend to say, 6:30 in the morning, 8 o'clock at night. Tuesday, Wednesday are better than Thursday, Friday, for example. And people also say Saturdays. And those are kind of some general guidance, and it also depends by industry. But what I would recommend to everyone on this webinar is try, right? So write really compelling subject lines, right? Make sure your call to action is mobile-friendly and focused. I see a lot of nonprofit newsletters with like 500 things going on, and I just get dizzy in the first 5 seconds and don't read it. And I can tell by the chat here that many of you don't either, right? So, and focus on, after the opens here, it clicks is, I said focus people's attention, but experiment with using buttons and colors, right? Think about, like, I have a big thumb, so can I actually click on the email on my iPhone? And someone asked earlier in the chat, does it take you to a mobile-friendly website? It better. Snow Crew is actually a mobile web app. It is not like a Android app or an iPhone app. It's just a responsive website that's an app that works. So everything is optimized. We expected and thought that people would want to use their mobile phones to request help, and while they're out in the field digging people out. So we designed it that way. Next slide, please. So one of the last things that's really important as you think about your metrics here is, are you telling stories, right? It's great that we got these volunteers. It's great that all these people who have been helped shoveled, but have we told compelling stories? And what are the reach of those stories? And what are the results of those stories we tell? One of the things we do is we use Google conversion goals. So, for example, I talked earlier about how many people signed up. I can actually tell you how many people signed up on our website from emails that I sent or from Facebook posts, because I use something called custom Google URLs. And I'll tweet these out later, and I'll add them to the chat so you can see them. But it gives me great data. It helps me figure out where to spend my time, because I only have so much time, and my mission is so important, so I need that data. But for example, let me bring this back together here with the Jeep that you're seeing on the left of your screen. This particular person, this was in northern New Jersey, she and her husband were trapped in their home for 5 days. They couldn't get out. They couldn't get to the store. They didn't know any of their neighbors. And it actually was on major news in New Jersey at the beginning of February. And it was really a wonderful story because what happened was volunteers found out. And as soon as we put it out there, like 45 minutes later, 3 people showed up at their house, shoveled them out. They even brought firewood up to the doorstep so they wouldn't have to troop through the snow. They actually couldn't do it. And so we told that story, and we told the story about the volunteers, and we always put the volunteers up front. But at the end of each story, we say, if you'd like to help, click here to sign up. And then I can track how many people clicked from the story that created a profile on snowcrew.org. I can learn about the types of stories that I'm telling and which are most effective. I can apply the best practices and the data that I've learned in my role here at GovDelivery and from my work in the communities to help guide the actions I take. So when we talk about analysis and metrics, it's about reporting progress, but it's also about guiding your future activities. Because remember, what this is all about, it's about getting large audiences to take action, active large audiences. And when you do that and you're successful at it, you can do something really cool with your mission. You can continue serving those folks. And by the way, Snow Crew is something I run in my free time, right? We've had this massive impact. Awesome technology, good strategy, great storytelling, wonderful partnerships, and the most amazing volunteers that make this all happen. So I think there may be one more slide, or have I actually run my course here? I think I might be done. So that's it for me. I'll post those links, and I'll turn it back over to the folks at VISTA.
All right. Well, thank you, Joseph. Just to tie it all together, here is some ways that we're trying to use some of those same strategies that Joseph and Jennifer discussed here at the AmeriCorps VISTAS headquarters. As you'll see on the far right, we have a sample email message where we are, again, trying to get people to do, as Joseph and Jennifer said, to take various actions. And so during different days of the week, we had different actions that we wanted people to take, and they all related to the AmeriCorps 20th anniversary year. We also tried to showcase some of the ways that people had previously followed suit with what we were trying to promote. So, for example, the week before, we had what was called the Day of the A, and we did a recap of how people had taken advantage of some of the promotional things that we were doing that week. You also see in the middle through our Facebook page how we tried to do just an image that we wanted people to share about what AmeriCorps members are doing as it relates to the Healthy Futures category. And this is, again, a way to let people know that we are having our AmeriCorps 20th anniversary. You see that the logo is at the bottom of the image. But more importantly, for those who don't even know what AmeriCorps is, maybe this is a way for them to just see how the work that you all are doing is relating to real lives being changed. And again, we did that same thing on Twitter on the far left, where we don't have as many characters, but we did have a great blog post that was already on our website, and we said, you know what, let's make sure that we share this story with our followers to support, again, the AmeriCorps 20th anniversary, but putting that in perspective. So not just saying that AmeriCorps members are doing great work, but what's an example of something that an AmeriCorps VISTA member is doing. And this was a wonderful story about a member who was serving in Baltimore, helping seniors get access to food. And, again, it just gave a real-life picture to the various things that VISTA members are doing. Similar to what Joseph and Jennifer mentioned, we aren't trying to just have random digital media go out to our followers or people who subscribe. Everything that we are doing is trying to be connected to various actions that we want to have people do, also various things that we want to promote, so that it comes across as a cohesive message and not just postings here and there or things that people have subscribed to but don't really fit with the sort of messages that they were intending to receive. Just to wrap it all up for you all, because I know we did a lot of information today, and you may be saying, okay, so what are some concrete things or tips that I can just take back to my organization that starting tomorrow we can sit down, look at what it is that we're doing, the things that we need to communicate, and put it in perspective to see how we can start being more effective. So the first myth that I want to just discuss is a lot of people believe that the more you post things on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, the more success you all will have. I know I saw a lot of discussion in the chat about people explaining that they hate when they get blasted with a lot of emails or a lot of posts, and it really turns you off. The same happens for the followers or and people you are trying to communicate with. So focus less on the amount, but actually on the quality of the information that you're giving to people. And, that doesn't mean that you can't be creative, but you just have to make sure that it's really relevant to those individuals who have signed up to get information from you. The second thing is it has a lot to do with what Joseph experienced with his snow crew. You want to get personal because, remember, it isn't the email that's going to take the action. It's the people who you're communicating with who are going to make things happen. And so one of the things that probably made his campaign very successful is its neighbors talking to neighbors. And just like VISTA is based on communities helping communities or people within communities helping one another, make sure that that's getting across when you are communicating via social media or through email. The third thing is a lot of people think that you don't need a strategy, and they're wrong. Overall, digital media should be incorporated into a larger strategy. That's what we discussed when we saw that first image, and it just seemed like chaos to a lot of people. This shouldn't be chaos to individuals. Your blog posts and your Facebook images and the emails that you send, they shouldn't be just a random spectrum of things. Everything needs to be part of a larger communication strategy or plan, and that way you can make sure that in the end you can look back at your analytics or what the goals were that you were trying to reach and see if it matches up. And the only way that you can do that is if you have a strategy from the beginning and not just random postings along the way. The next thing is a lot of people think because social media or digital media is instantaneous that this is going to happen in real time, the results that you're trying to achieve. Remember, communication, whether it's through digital means or old school face-to-face practices, this is something that takes time to build. So the same way that you have to work with volunteers over time to get them to be loyal volunteers, keep that in mind when you're doing your communications with individuals, that followers may be on your Facebook page or your Twitter account, but it's going to be the investment and the meaningful engagement that you do that makes them convert from just being on a Facebook page to coming into the office on a regular basis to assist you with different projects. And the last thing that I wanted to discuss is that content creation and digital media, they are not two separate things. The content that you have to share, whether it's on your website or just through emails or social media, this is something that should go hand in hand. So your digital media efforts should in many ways ignite or help to spread the great content that you want to share. So if you have an event that's going on or a great project that you want to share, social media is just going to be a way to amplify those efforts, but it shouldn't be the only thing that you do to get that information across. Now I'm going to turn it over to Danielle to make sure that we get to those wonderful questions that I have been seeing coming in, especially in the chat, and make sure that you have an opportunity to get any follow-up things addressed that you may have felt that we went through a little too fast.
Thank you so much, Tracy. So we're going to do a couple of things. Robin has been responding to some of the things in the chat, and she has some questions outlined in Q&A. And thank you, Joseph, and thank you, Jennifer, for responding as well in the chat. You'll also see that the evaluation has opened up, so we don't want to distract you from asking your questions, but we want to let you at least know that the evaluation is open should you want to start that process. So I'm going to turn it over to Robin. Robin, what's our first question?
Great. Yeah, our first question is, so for things like a lot of people have questions just on kind of some of the mechanics of like how you set up things like text to subscribe. So I guess for everyone, what are some of the like platforms and systems that you would recommend VISTAS might look into if they're looking to harness some of the features that they talk about in your webinar?
Is that a question for Joseph and I?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So I think most of the strategies that we talked about today, we work at GovDelivery, so we're actually a cloud provider of email and SMS and social media communications and programs. So we can really only speak to the capabilities of the system from GovDelivery. And we only partner with the public sector and like nonprofit organizations. So I know there's other like email marketing tools or maybe like SMS marketing tools. Like I'm sure some of you mentioned in the chat that you work with like a Constant Contact or a MailChimp. They do like just the email newsletter piece, or maybe you might find one that just does like an SMS piece. And so the programs are probably specific to that functionality, which I know a little bit of the basics of what they offer, but I recommend just kind of doing your research, going out on Google and looking at chats and reviews of different types of products and talking amongst yourselves. You guys are a really great network of communicators, and seeing what kind of has worked for all of you.
Jen, can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually I posted some links to some of the different providers and apps that they have for Facebook in the chat. So if you comb through there, you'll find some, and I know that many of the other folks on the webinar have done the same. I also just did a Google test to see what I could find. So if you Google like Facebook email sign-up app or open source text sign-up app, that kind of thing, you'll find stuff that's out there. There's also some great networks like N10, the national. Oh gosh, what am I forgetting here? N10 and I can't remember. I'll look it up and tweet it out later. But there are open source apps that are out there that you can use for free. So just Google search for Facebook. I'll find some stuff for everybody and tweet it out after the webinar or figure out another way to get it to you. So there's a great community. There's lots of knowledge, like Jen said, and just do a little research and you'll find it.
Great. And we will also, between what Joseph tweets and the great resources that you guys have been putting in the chat throughout, compile all of those into a Word document that we'll both send out to you after the webinar and have available on the VISTA campus. So another question, again, for I think Joseph and Jennifer, but if Tracy or Danielle have experience with this, is questions about cost. And, for some of these things you describe, are there low-cost options, or what kind of budget should VISTAS expect to kind of, look at to implement some of these things?
So I'll take a stab at this since I have some experience. Let's think about costs, and let's also think about investment, right? So when you think about cost, you have to know, again, kind of what is your goal, right? My goal with Snow Crew was to help people get shoveled out, and so the investment I made was a lot of time, and I had a great relationship with a partner who helped build the site for me. But one of the investments I would recommend everybody make is really making sure you have an email platform. And there's some great options out there that if you're an organization with not a huge budget that you can use, and by being smart, you can get out there and drive a ton of activity, a ton of engagement. So you can look at, MailChimp and Constant Contact if you're just looking to send the message out. And in terms of, there's a lot of free open source software out there that's also available. So Google open source and whatever you're looking for. You have to consider, though, sometimes, support is important, and there are some tools you can use that have been rated. So just make sure you do your research on that.
Thanks. And
I guess the last thing I would say is to consider is what is the cost of not taking action? What is the cost of not investing?
Yeah, I think that's really important to think about and very helpful. I actually, one question, I think, Joseph, for you, because it was particularly on your slides, do you think somebody asked, is it unproductive to have a lot of metric goals? Is it better to focus on one or two, or do you focus on, all of the above?
So I actually saw that, and I'm glad I have an opportunity to respond. So when we go back to the snow crew example, right? Like I track, how many new folks are signing up for email and how many total opens and how many total clicks. But I don't spend a lot of time doing it. I do spend a lot of time looking at the messages, the subject lines, the call to actions to drive more clicks, because what I care about is people signing up to volunteer, right? And then you really do have to focus, and a lot of folks just want to show big numbers because, like, look how many likes we have. It doesn't matter. How many people are signing up, right? How many more people are signing up? So you have to focus your question on what matters most to your mission. And I posted something in chat, in the webinar chat, a blog post that one of my associates wrote called How to Track What Happens After the Click, right? So oftentimes organizations don't understand that you can actually track how many people registered for your webinar or for your event, or who downloaded a document or a guide or a playbook or whatever it is by using Google conversion goals and tracking. And it's a very extensive, step-by-step, detailed kind of how-to blog post that I suggest you look at. And I tweeted it out a little while ago, too. On Twitter, I am as at Joseph Porcelli. And GovDelivery, at GovDelivery, like Jen Kaplan said earlier, we post all this kind of stuff all the time. So we've got an awesome blog, and surprise, surprise, you can sign up to receive an email each time we post something. And we encourage all of you to sign up for that because we put out lots of great tips and insights all the time.
Great. Another question is, what kind of subject lines draw people in, or what would you recommend for impactful subject lines?
Great question. Jen, do you want to take a stab at that with all the studies you've done, or would you like me to answer?
Sure. There's a couple things. So subject lines are really interesting because it's very specific and relevant to the audience that you're trying to reach. So we get all sorts of questions around, should we do short subject line, long subject line? Should we use emoticons? For us, the answer is really about testing what works with your audience. So most email tools, and that includes ours as well, digital communications tools, will allow you to do some testing. So try a subject line with half of your audience and then a different subject line with the other half of your audience and see what kind of resonates more with your group. I think for us, we really find that switching up the subject line will help drive an increase in open rates. So if you send a weekly or monthly update, your subject line shouldn't be November update or this month's update. You should think about what we also did with that pre-header text, where you make it a little contextual to the content of the email. So maybe new events, donor spotlights, and more, something like that as your subject line. But I think you're really going to get the best results and the most opens if you test what works with the audience that you're communicating with.
Great, thank you. I think that's great advice, and there's also a link in the chat that looks over a little bit of like A/B testing to figure out what works. And again, those resources we'll put all into a PDF and send them out to you following the webinar. I have a couple of questions, and maybe Tracy, you want to take some of these because they're social media based. So the first one is it overkill to have more than one Facebook page if you're targeting different audiences such as donors, families, etc.?
Sure, Robin. This is a question that I think a lot of organizations face, and I think one way to look at this is, do you have enough content to constantly engage that audience? So if you're finding that you have multiple social media channels and that you don't have enough unique content to address that audience on a consistent basis multiple times a week, then maybe it makes more sense to condense those pages. And especially if you only have one person working on updating these pages and you don't have the time to allocate the resources to do it on a regular basis. But if you find, for example, that the audience are very separate and you have the content, then I think it makes sense. Again, it really is going to be based on your capacity and the amount of information that you have to share to those various groups.
Great. And I realized for those people on the phone that we have not yet opened the lines. Operator, can you instruct us on how to open the lines for questions?
Yes, to ask a question, press *1 and record your first and last name. If you wish to withdraw your question, please press *2. One moment, please.
Great. And while we're waiting for that, I have another question. What strategy would you recommend for building a database, particularly with an org that deals with seniors?
Oh, that's a great question. That's kind of targeting a specific demographic. I know we see that increasingly more and more people above the age of 55 are going on social media, so I think definitely testing out, adding, when you're tweeting or doing a post on Facebook, or like we had an example of how you can, with GovDelivery, install an app on your Facebook, kind of go there to see if you can acquire more people signing up. And then I think also with the website, I think also some of our customers have found success with those mailers. So we talked about groups that have email or have physical addresses and names but not email addresses, actually sending out a postcard with a link to really kind of promoting the benefits and the value proposition of why they should sign up for email. I think testing a couple of those strategies would work, and those are some things that have worked well for the people that we serve.
And, I just want to add one thing to that. I know a lot of you all partner with other organizations that may have similar demographics, and the nonprofit world is one that is more receptive to this than maybe in a more competitive atmosphere. But, feel free to reach out to your fellow VISTAs and to organizations in your area that may have the demographics that you're trying to address, and ask if you can have, a small blurb in their newsletter asking for sign-ups to your email list, or if they can send out a tweet or retweet you to get people to be aware of the services that you can provide to their demographic.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Do we have any questions on the phone?
There are no questions queued at this time.
Okay. I have a question. Again, this is like a social media question, but maybe people who have experience with this can answer. How viable is Facebook when working with younger audiences? I've heard many youth are forgoing using Facebook because they don't want their parents to check up on them.
I can take a stab at that. There's actually lots of great research out there on like the Social Media Examiner and Mashable that answers a lot of these questions. I really think it has to do with, reaching an audience is important, but understanding your audience can even be more important. So audiences can be in different places, and you can engage them in different ways. Like I said earlier in this presentation or the webinar here, is that it's really about your marketing mix, right? Do you want to reach them directly? How are they engaging? Where are they engaging, right? So I think that's important to think about. And also, when you engage with different audiences and the channels that they choose, it's important to speak to them as a peer and with respect, and not, just kind of understanding the culture and the conversation. And that's something that we haven't touched on today. We've talked about different tactics on how to get people to open emails and click on things, but that's always important. So just like walking into a new room for the first time, it might make sense to do some listening, look around, ask some questions, contribute, be helpful, but that will build trust and help others feel comfortable engaging with you. So it's kind of like, basic things that you would do in person, you'll also do online, and that may mean that you'll have to check out different rooms because different audiences are on different platforms. And another great resource would be the Pew Center for American Life and the Internet. I think I'm saying that backwards, some combination of those words. But they've got a lot of data on who's on which platform, and I found that to be very helpful in my thinking and strategic planning for, our clients, our projects, and things I'm interested in.
Great, thank you. And then another question is that maybe Tracy as a VISTA rep can speak. Should VISTAs initiate electronic communication or blend in with what the service site is doing?
by initiate, do you mean create a new sort of communication? Is that what's being asked?
I think maybe that's what they're saying.
Okay, so I know for many of you, it may even be part of your description or your VAD that you're going to be in charge of creating communications. I would say that if you are going to start up a new platform in some way, whether it's creating a newsletter or creating a Instagram account, that is definitely something that you should work hand in hand with your organization to do, mainly because, and this is a webinar that we're going to have in the upcoming months, is that you want it to be sustainable. So you don't want it to be something where you create it and you're the only one who knows about it and is working on it, and then after your service year has completed, the organization can't stay up with those followers or subscribers that you've been able to build for them.
Thank you. And we are at 3:30, so I'm going to turn it back over to Danielle, who will close us out.
Great. Thanks so much. Everyone, I'm reading some of your suggestions and answers in the evaluation and also in the chat. And just wanted to let you know that, again, this is one of several social media offerings that we've had. We've rolled them into the work, so they are available for you on the VISTA webinar page under the work. But there's also a Social Media Monday course page on the VISTA campus. And on those on-demand videos, there are several topics that cover everything from building a strategic social media plan to how to engage listeners. There's specific ones on just Facebook. There's also a specific one on Google and Google for nonprofits. So if we didn't cover it in this particular webinar, know that we have some on demand that may be very helpful for you that we hope you'll take a look at. And we're also going to use quite a bit of the information that you shared with us today for some of our upcoming webinars. We hope you continue to look out for that and that you leave us some more comments and just let us know how we can help serve you for this particular training on communications and how we're using social media. So we thank you for your feedback. Again, the evaluation is open, so please go ahead and fill that out. We do very much want to hear from you and want to hear what you all want from us. I'm going to turn this over to Tracy, who is going to end this for us and take us away, Tracy.
All right. Well, thank you, Danielle, and thank you once again, Joseph and Jennifer, for being part of this presentation today, and thank you all who have been part of the presentation from the start to the beginning. We know this was a long one, but thank you for hanging in there and making sure that you make the most out of this opportunity. As you know, we have webinars going on all the time, so we hope you will join us again on April 10th for Life After AmeriCorps, the Importance of Strategic Networking. And for if any reason you aren't able to join a webinar or you missed something, you can always check out the VISTA events calendar to see when something happened, or check out the ongoing learning pages on the VISTA campus to see something on demand or see when upcoming webinars are happening. Thank you once again for participating, and we look forward to seeing you on April 10th.